So I'm going to take a couple minutes to welcome you to Casual Connect Europe 2013 here in Hamburg. I'm very happy to be back here and hope you guys enjoy the show that we've spent the last 6 months putting together for you. I had a couple of announcements that people have asked me to make. The first is that for those of you that are planning on attending the Singapore show in May, there is a special discount for the hotel that actually ends on February 19th. So if you're making travel plans to Singapore, and I hope to be seeing you there, make sure you make your hotel reservations soon to get the best price. I also wanted to mention that we are doing a couple of different things at the show this year here in Hamburg that you might not be aware of, and I want to make sure that you have an opportunity to see them. The first is we have been putting together the Indie Games Showcase for the last 5 or 6 shows, and this year we've expanded it fairly dramatically. So if you go downstairs, you'll find that there are about 60, a little more than 60 independent developers who've come to Casual Connect Hamburg this year to show their games. And some of them are super awesome. In addition to that, those independent developers are doing presentations all day for the next 3 days in the conference rooms downstairs, and that's something that we've never done before. Downstairs has always been meeting rooms and press rooms and stuff like that, but I encourage you to go down there and check it out this year because there's some fantastic stuff going downstairs at the Indie Showcase. There's also a few of those games are being displayed in the Platinum area out here in front in the lobby, but all the rest of them are downstairs, and you'll need to head down there to check it out and congratulate those guys on their hard work. I think we all have some experience with independent development. It's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears for not a lot of reward. So go down there and see what those guys are doing. The next thing that I wanted to mention is on the 3rd day of the show, and I know that all of you are likely to be asleep, especially in the morning of the 3rd day, but what you don't want to miss is in this hall on the 3rd day, we're doing the first ever all-day casino track for Casual Connect Hamburg, and we've basically got an entire day of talks related to social casinos, real money gambling in casual and social games, and we've got a heck of a lineup. In the early part of the day tomorrow, on the 3rd day, for the first half of the day in the casino track, we've got some of the big casino operators that are coming to talk about why social games are important to them. We also have what I hope to be a tremendously interesting presentation on state-of-the-art design for slot machines. I don't know how many of you have been to Vegas recently, but slot machines have changed a lot over the last 10 years. They've actually taken quite a few plays from the video game book in terms of creating ongoing experiences and some really spectacular stuff in slot machine design. The second half of the day for casinos is going to be all about game developers who are involved in both virtual and real money gambling and how that's affected their business. So you don't want to miss the 3rd day here in Hall G, the first ever Casual Connect Casino Day. And then the last thing I want to say before we kick off the show and introduce the first speaker is that there is a party tonight. I know none of you knew that, because we never do parties here at Casual Connect. But at the Halo Club tonight, sponsored by Amplifier, is going to be an awesome party. And shuttles leave from the Radisson Hotel starting at about 8:45 this evening. So I hope to see you all there. And with that, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker, Jens Begemann, the CEO and founder of Wooga. Jens has developed an awesome company right in the heart of Berlin, and he's agreed to come and kick off the show for us today. So with that, I'm going to hand this over to Jens. Thank you for coming, Jens.
I would like to ask you, what is required to make tablets the best game machines in the world? So a tablet like the iPad, what is required to make the tablets the best game machines that were ever made? Because if you talk to real gamers, they think their console is still much better. They think their Xbox, their PlayStation is still much better. And why is that the case? It's not because of the 3D graphics, because now they are pretty similar to a console experience. It's also not because of the screen size. I mean, obviously with an Xbox or a PlayStation and a 50-inch TV, that's much bigger, but if you hold the tablet like this, visually, it's about the same. So that's not the reason. The key reason gamers believe, and they're probably right, that a PlayStation and an Xbox is still a better games machine is because of controls. Because you've got these awesome controllers that were fine-tuned over decades. And now the answer or the question is, what can we do in regards to tablets? Can we do things like this, like on-screen controls? Or can we build accessories like this one? Should we sell something like this with every tablet? Should we encourage every tablet owner to buy an external controller? And if we do, then tablets are finally the best game machines ever created? No, I think that's quite ridiculous. I think that's as if you would take a PlayStation and you would say, well, to make the PlayStation an awesome machine, you need a mouse. That's not the case. Or to make a Nintendo Entertainment System the best possible machine in the 80s, you would have needed a keyboard. That's not the case. It's really about the games that you create for the particular machine. So let's take a few steps back. Let's go a few decades back. Let's go back to the 70s. In the 70s, the first popular games that were created were machines like this, right? Machines where you had a pedal, like a little dial you could turn, and that enabled games like Pong. And I would like to show you a picture of my first computer. It's not actually a picture I took, but I owned this particular machine, an Apple II with Breakout was also an awesome game that could be controlled with a pedal. But, there it is. Sorry for my misclicking. So this is the first computer I ever owned. It's an Apple II with disk drives and these two pedals. Actually, every Apple II was sold with two pedals, every Apple II. And that was because Steve Wozniak, when he was at Atari in the 70s, created Breakout. And he wanted to make sure that Breakout could also be played on an Apple II. And I remember when I, in the 80s, played Breakout like crazy. And the pedal is the best possible control for a game like Pong or Breakout. Because with a pedal, you can make very precise movements, right? You can make very small turns left and right. And you can also, within the fraction of a second, jump to the other side of the screen and hit the ball there. And that's really, really awesome. But the pedal has limitations. It was not very versatile. And therefore, the next evolution was the gamepad. And the gamepad that came, for example, with the Nintendo Entertainment System, then enabled games like Mario Bros., right? And Donkey Kong. And also jump and runs, right? Like this. It created a completely new genre. A completely new genre was created because of the gamepad, because of the versatility of the gamepad. It was not the ideal game it was not the ideal control for Pong or Breakout, and therefore Pong and Breakout were not very big on these machines. But it was the ideal input method for games like this, for jump and runs. And there were certain popular genres at the time that were not really fun with a gamepad. And therefore, companies like Nintendo came up with this, the light gun shooter. And the light gun shooter, which was a very, very popular accessory back at the time, was the ideal control for Duck Hunt, for example. It was also the perfect control for deer hunt and for moose hunt. So you see the variety of this, right? It was pretty limited, but for these limited set of games, it was the perfect control. And at the same time, on the PC, you mostly had keyboards. Most PC owners only had a keyboard. They had no joystick, no pedal, nothing like this. And game creators came up with new kinds of games for these machines. They created the Oregon Trail. This is the first version of the Oregon Trail. Looks pretty different to today's iPad version, I would say. But this was the first version. Or King's Quest. I played King's Quest a lot. That was awesome. And then over the years, graphical capabilities and processing capabilities of PCs got much, much, much better. So there, games like Wolfenstein 3D came, which was banned in Germany, for example, which was still controlled with the keyboard. So much better graphics, but still controlled by the keyboard. And then just shortly after that, there was Doom. And Doom was the breakthrough for the first-person shooter genre. And Doom was controlled with the keyboard. I remember myself, 1993, exactly 20 years ago, how excited I was to play Doom. And with Doom, you could do a limited set of things. You could, of course, shoot. You could turn right and turn left, walk forwards and backwards, and you could strafe, right? Like walk sideways. And that was all keyboard controlled, and it was really, really, really an awesome game. But it also had certain limitations, and we will come back to that in a few minutes. And then something big happened. The Rolling Stones licensed a song called Start Me Up for this campaign, for the Microsoft Windows 95 campaign. And what that did was it put a mouse to every PC. Starting from 1995, every PC had a mouse. Before that, it was an accessory that was relatively expensive. And because of Windows 95, every PC owner had a mouse. And that had some big, big, big impacts on the games industry. Because now you could rely that if you build a mass market game, there's a mouse. And what that enabled is quite a big revolution, because it created completely new game genres that didn't exist before. Let's start very simple, like solitaire, right? How do you do solitaire with a gamepad or with a keyboard? It doesn't work. It's not fun. But with a mouse, hundreds of millions of people played it. Minesweeper is very similar. Then you have games like Bejeweled, also didn't exist before, were invented as a new genre because of the mouse. Hidden object games, a new genre invented because of the mouse. There were also game genres that existed before, right? You may remember games like Maniac Mansion, like adventures, graphical adventures, that really took off like crazy when everybody had a mouse, like The Secrets of Monkey Island and Indiana Jones. Really became huge. This genre even got a name, point-and-click adventure. You can't do a point-and-click adventure with a keyboard, right? And so these genres that existed before became popular because of the mouse. And then the mouse did something pretty big. It changed a genre, and then this genre became the biggest genre in the computer games industry. And that is first-person shooters. Because you may remember, right, with Doom, you could only move in this level, right? So let's assume you are all aliens. That would be perfect for Doom. You're all on the same floor and same level. But if somebody would be up there on the ceiling, you can't kind of aim at that alien with a keyboard. But with a mouse you can, because you can really make a movement in all directions. And that was a pretty big breakthrough because of the mouse. Now let's come to touch. I believe that touch is an even bigger change to the games industry than the mouse is. It's an even bigger revolution. But I think we don't really fully approach it right, because we build games like this one. Graphically, very similar to a PC or console first-person shooter. But the controls are virtual joysticks and virtual buttons. That's not good. That's not fun. That's not how you build a great game. Unfortunately, a first-person shooter on a tablet is not fun. And I think there are only two options. I will tell you what is not an option. I don't think that first-person shooters on tablets will become huge because all of these external controllers will be sold. A fraction of people will buy them, but I think instead of buying an external controller for your tablet and you always carry it with you, people will continue to play them on their consoles. And that's good, and the PlayStation 4 and the next Xbox will be awesome machines, and that's an awesome genre for these machines. So people won't buy these external controls. I think there are two options. The one option is somebody invents a new control mechanism for first-person shooters that's not based on a virtual joystick, that's not based on virtual buttons. I haven't seen it, but I hope this will come along, that somebody invents a new control mechanism for first-person shooters. And the other alternative is this genre will go away, on tablets at least. It won't be popular anymore. Like jump and runs are not popular on the PC because it's not fun with a keyboard and a mouse. And like many other genres, like strategy games are huge on the PC, but really small on consoles, because with a mouse it's great, with a gamepad it's not. So these, I think, are the two options. Either a new control mechanism or the genre will almost disappear. But I think there are some positive examples and really some really great examples how touch can be used in a really good way. Let's look at Temple Run. Who of you has played Temple Run? Don't be shy, I know it's 9 in the morning. Yeah, so roughly half of the audience has played Temple Run. And Temple Run is an awesome example of how you build a game for the touchscreen. Because you've got these gestures, right? You can swipe up and down, you can swipe left and right, you can control it with one hand. It's really, really good. It's really well made for the touchscreen. If Temple Run would have been a port from the console, I think the game would not have been portrait, it would have been landscape. There would be a virtual joystick and virtual buttons. But because of no legacy, because there wasn't a console version, because of this, the creators were really able to rethink from the ground up. And I think that's what we have to do when we create new games. So let's look a little bit at the pros and cons of touch devices. So what can you do really well with a touch device and what is a little bit more difficult? I would highlight 4 things that are really awesome about touch devices. The first one is you've got direct control. That may seem obvious, right? You touch things on the screen and you've got direct control. But actually, it's not that obvious, because with a mouse, you make a movement here, and things change on the screen. With a gamepad, you press buttons here, things change on the screen. With a touch screen, you directly manipulate the world, and everything feels much closer, much more real, much more personal. That's a big thing. The second thing is gestures. Pinch to zoom is a classic. Temple Run showed another set of gestures. That's something that is really easy to do with your finger. It's not so easy to do with another device. The second, number 3 is multi-touch, right? It's not just kind of, you can touch multiple points of the screen at the same time. With the mouse, you can always just click one thing. Here you can touch multiple points. And then every touchscreen device has an accelerometer that is more rare in other devices, so you can do these tilting and these kinds of movements. Quite big things, 4 big things, right? That's number 4. On the con side, we also have a few things. The one is we've got the mouse over. You can't have a mouse over, right? You move over an object and then you get more information. That doesn't work. You have to touch it. There's no difference between clicking and mouse over. That doesn't exist. Number 2, your fingers aren't invisible, right? That's also pretty obvious. But if you have your finger here on the device, everything under it you can't see, and you have to take that under control, into accordance when creating your games. And number 3 is you have no tactile feedback, right? You have no tactile feedback. You don't know if you hit the virtual button or if you were a little bit to the side. Okay, so these were the pros and cons of touchscreen devices. But why is this all relevant? Well, it's all very relevant because of the sheer number of devices. By the end of this year, there will be 1.4 billion smartphones in active use, not sold, active use, 1.4 billion. By the end of this year, there will be 270 million tablets in active use. And just a few months later, in roughly 1 year, in aggregate, there will be 2 billion touch devices in active use. 2 billion. 2 billion touch devices. And just to put that into comparison, we have roughly 40 million consoles sold every year. PlayStation, Xbox, Nintendo Wii, Wii U, all together, just 40 million per year, but roughly 2 billion touch devices. That's a huge difference. And what that means is this will become the games platform, the default games platform of the future. Because today, people who buy a tablet buy it mostly or usually in addition to their PC. But I know from friends, once they bought their iPad, they say, well, I use my PC less. And I'm sure many of you who bought an iPad, to you that happens the same. Not for work. For work, the PC will still remain very important for many, many years. But I'm talking about consumers. Consumers who buy a tablet use their PC less. Okay, fine, they still have both devices, so you can create games for both. But what happens next? In 2 years, these consumers will replace their iPad with the next one. They will keep their PC. And in 4 years from now, they will replace their iPad or tablet again, and their PC by then will be slow, it won't run the latest software, And they will say, well, I use it so little, why should I replace it? And the PC will go away. We're just a few years away from the time where the average consumer doesn't have a PC anymore. We have seen the peak in PC usage. For the last decades, the PC has always gotten more penetration, always gotten more penetration. And we have reached the peak, and over the next few years, it will decline for consumers. Not talking about businesses, but for consumers, and we do games for consumers. And what can we do to be ready, to be prepared? And we at VUGA think about this a lot. It's not easy, because you have to really get used to this fact that you build games really for touch devices. I think if you approach it with this mindset of, this is how it has worked in the past, that's tough. If you approach it with this mindset of, I have to create a game that works on the PC and it works on a touch device, that's also tough. So we try to tell ourselves to reset our minds. And I think we, as an industry, need to reset our minds. We really need to rethink how we create games, because we're at the beginning of a new era. This era that will have an even bigger impact than the mouse is this era of touchscreens. So this question of how can tablets become the best possible game devices is we have to rethink game design. We have to think about, like it was with the mouse, how can we change existing genres so that they are better on this new platform? And how can we create completely new genres? And I hope that someone here in this room and someone from our industry will change an existing genre so that it becomes the #1 genre on touch devices and becomes much bigger than it is today. And I also hope that someone in this room will invent a completely new game genre that didn't exist before, because that's a new game genre that's only possible for touch devices. And if we achieve this as a games industry, then I think this era of touch is the best era we ever had as an industry.
Thank you, Jens. Questions for Jens?
Hi Jens, thank you for a great speech. I'm Björn from Arctic Mill, and I was just wondering, you were speaking about touch, and I totally agree with you, but what kind of screens will be like the dominant ones for the future? Will it be like the iPhone size, or the tablet, or even like TVs?
So I personally, and we at VUGA, believe very much that almost everybody, in the Western world at least, will have a smartphone that is somewhere between 4 and 5 inches, and a tablet that is somewhere between 7 and 11 inches. I'm not a big believer in TV, or smart TV, for a number of reasons. First of all, what's the advantage towards a console? And secondly, the update cycles of TV are so much slower. Typically, TVs are replaced every 7 or 8 years that I don't see the same innovation coming out of it like out of smartphones and tablets.
Have you given any thought or research to the level of complexity of gestures that people are actually willing to do on tablets and smartphones?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that's an area where we are constantly experimenting, and where you have to find a balance between kind of the complexity, how you can make the controls in a game, and also the learnability. I think there are certain applications where just the number of gestures you need to remember are so complex that the average user doesn't get it. So I think that's a really good question, and we don't have a final answer to that.
Other questions for Jens? Wow, you must have done a really good job. Everybody totally understands, and so get out there and make those touchscreen games, okay? The ones that he was talking about that are innovative and change old genres in a new way. Thank you very much.
Thank you.